Okay, have you ever just stopped and wondered how many people have ever lived on Earth? I mean, ever. It's one of those huge, almost unanswerable questions, right? But believe it or not, demographers have actually given it a serious shot. So let's dig in because the answer isn't just a number, it's a story that completely reframes our place in history. First things first, let's start with a number we all kind of know. Right now, as we speak, there are about 8.1 billion of us sharing this planet. This is it, the biggest the human family has ever been. But, and this is a big but, this is just one tiny, tiny snapshot in a very long movie. So, what's the grand total? Drumroll, please. Researchers estimate that roughly 117 billion members of our species, Homo sapiens, have ever been born. Just let that sink in for a second. 117 billion. That number just puts our current population in a whole new light. And this is where it gets really wild. If you look at this chart, it kind of visualizes that huge number. And honestly, it's a bit of a shock. All 8.1 billion of us alive today, we make up only about 7% of all humans who have ever existed. The other 93%, that's about 109 billion people, they all came before us. We are literally standing on the shoulders of a vast, silent history. So this brings us to a myth you've probably heard at some point. The idea that there are more people alive today than have ever died. Well, it's just not true, not even close. As you can see from the numbers, the dead actually outnumber the living by about 14 to 1. Which, of course, begs the question, how on earth do we even know this? Well, the answer is in this field you could call demographic archaeology. I mean, think about it. For 99% of human history, there were no censuses, no birth certificates, nothing. So figuring this out is like a massive historical detective story, piecing together clues from our deep, deep past. And this quote just nails it. The experts who work on this describe the whole thing as a blend of really hard science and, well, informed art. They have to use complex mathematical models, archaeological clues, and a whole lot of educated assumptions about what life was like way back when. A massive piece of this puzzle is just deciding where to start the clock. Do we start with our genus, Homo, over 2 million years ago? Or maybe with behaviorally modern humans, around 50,000 years ago? For a long time, that was the debate. But then, recent fossil finds in Morocco completely changed the game, pushing the date for anatomically modern Homo sapiens all the way back to 300,000 years ago. And that's the starting line most demographers use now. Now, you might be thinking, whoa, if we added another 250,000 years to our history, wouldn't that make the total number of people explode? But actually, it doesn't. And the reason is pretty simple. For the vast, vast majority of our time on Earth, the human population was incredibly small. We're talking maybe 10,000 to 30,000 people on the entire planet. And this is the brutal reality that kept our numbers so low. For almost all of human history, the average life expectancy at birth was only 10 to 12 years. Now, that doesn't mean people just dropped dead at 11. It's because infant and child mortality was so unbelievably high that it dragged the average way, way down. So, just to survive those conditions, the birth rate had to be sky high. We're talking about 80 births for every 1,000 people, just to keep the species from blinking out of existence. This constant, high turnover engine of births, running for hundreds of thousands of years, is what generated that massive total of 117 billion people. Okay, so for millennia, humanity was basically stuck in first gear, population-wise. But then two major things happened that completely changed our trajectory and, well, let our numbers finally explode. So, back around 8000 BCE, right at the dawn of agriculture, the entire world population was only about 5 million people. To put that in perspective for you, that is fewer people than live in some single cities today. It's just incredible. The invention of farming was the first game changer. Suddenly, we had a stable food supply, which meant we could support bigger families. And even though new health problems cropped up, the sheer number of births started to outpace deaths. In just 8,000 years, the population shot up by 60 times, hitting 300 million by the year 1 CE. But even after that first big boom, growth was just painfully slow. I mean, it took another 1,800 years, a period filled with famines and pandemics like the Black Death, for us to get from that 300 million to our very first billion people. And here we go. This is the second explosion, and it is way more dramatic. Get this. It took 300,000 years to reach the first billion. The second billion just 130 years. The third, only 30. And lately, we've been adding a billion new people every 12 years or so. This crazy compression of growth is a uniquely modern thing.
So far, we've only been talking about us, Homo sapiens. But what happens if we zoom the camera all the way out and look at our entire human family tree, the whole genus Homo?
Well, when you start including our ancestors like Homo habilis and the incredibly successful Homo erectus, the total number of human-like individuals who have ever lived just jumps to a mind-boggling 217 billion. We really are just the latest chapter in a very, very long book. But for all our numbers, all 117 billion of us, this next slide puts our physical presence into a perspective that's, well, it's humbling. If you measure life by sheer physical mass, what's called biomass, all 8.1 billion of us alive today make up just 0.01% of all life on Earth. We are completely dwarfed by plants, and even by bacteria. But our physical weight definitely doesn't tell the whole story of our impact. This quote, however, does. The amount of energy we've burned through in just the last 75 years or so is greater than all the energy used by every human in the 4 millennia before that. It just goes to show, while we may be tiny in mass, our generation's footprint is bigger than any that has ever come before. But this incredible era of explosive growth, it's actually coming to an end. And demographers are now looking ahead, trying to figure out what's next for the human population curve.
The key concept for our future is something called peak population. It's pretty much what it sounds like, the moment when our numbers hit their absolute all-time high before beginning to fall for the first time in modern history on a global scale. So what is that peak number? Well, the United Nations projects that the human population is going to top out at around 10.4 billion people, probably sometime in the mid-2080s. And after that, we might just enter a long period of decline. So let's bring this all back home. Instead of just thinking about the 109 billion who came before us as some abstract statistic, think of it like this. For every single one of us alive today, there are about 14 people who lived, died, and contributed something to the world that we inherited.
You know, we are living in the single most populous, most impactful, and most connected moment in the entire 300,000 years story of our species. We benefit from everything that came before. So I guess the final question is, for all the generations that come after us, what legacy are we going to leave behind?